Good afternoon. I'd like to call this 84th meeting of the Jacksonville Tourism Development Authority to session, and welcome everybody that's watching on television and everybody that's in the room. We certainly have no spectators, so welcome everybody. You have before you today's agenda, and I'll take a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? And we have the minutes from the November 18th, 2021 meeting in front of you. You've had a chance to look at them. I'll entertain a motion to accept those.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? As we go through the agenda, we're going to move number 4 up to the lead. So if nobody objects, do we have a motion? We don't have to do that. We can do it unilaterally. Okay, so we're going to move number 4 up to the beginning, and we'll turn it over to John Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Hagan. This is an informational item which each of you already is acutely aware of, but I wanted to make sure the public was aware of it, and I will actually give a copy for the clerk to attach to the minutes of the meeting. And what I'm talking about is referenced here is North Carolina Session Law 2021-191, which has been codified in North Carolina General Statutes, Chapter 14-234.3. And this is what we've been referring to at the council meetings and at the meetings that I had with both ad hoc groups, that is the capital as well as the promotional ad hoc groups, as the new ethics law. The new ethics law is broad and encompassing, and I wanted to make sure, and I know each of you are aware of it, but I wanted to put it on the record exactly what this law says. So the law basically says no public official. We can stop right there, and each director is a public official as the definition is concerned. So you, as we've indicated to the council, and of course Mr. Warden sits with 2 hats on here today, but you are public officials. No public official shall knowingly participate in making or administering a contract, including the award of money in the form of a grant, loan, or other appropriation with any nonprofit with which that local public official, which that public official is associated. Before I come back to what the penalties may be, I want to tell you the definition of a nonprofit with which that public official may be associated. A public official is associated with a nonprofit if that public official is a director, an officer, or a governing board member. That's directly from the state statute. So what does that prohibit you from doing? If you sit here as a member of the TDA and you are dealing with an allocation, or the TDA is dealing with an allocation in reference to a particular 501c nonprofit. Well, first of all, the law says you cannot deliberate or vote on the contract or the allocation of money. Number 2, it says you are not, or you're prohibited from attempting to influence any other person who is deliberating or voting on the contract. And C, of course, is things that I think even knew before this new ethics law came out. You can't receive money in favor of voting to give money or a contract to a nonprofit organization. Very broad, very encompassing. If you fall within that definition of a public official that's associated with a nonprofit. Penalties are as follows. Number 1, any allocation to that nonprofit is void, or any contract with that nonprofit is void. It's not voidable, it is void. And the other thing, of course, that should be of interest to each of you individually, personally, is that a violation by a public official would be a Class 1 misdemeanor, which I think Mr. Wright and I agreed in one of our sessions was could be up to 120 days. Is that correct, Mr. Wright?
That's correct.
So again, that is the new law. I didn't write it. I'm here just to express it to each of you as TDA members again, and wanted to get that on the record, and I'll file a copy of it with the clerk to put in the record. If anyone has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. I've tried, as I said, I've met with many of you individually. I've met with both at Hoc Committees, and we've dealt with a lot of questions, and each of you have been provided a printed copy of it. But again, if any questions, please let me know, whether it's today or it comes up at any point in time in the future. We would do our best to monitor situations which we know that y'all may have an affiliation with, if we know that. But there's many times we don't know who y'all are maybe affiliated with or not that come before you. The burden will remain with each of you. Any questions?
Not really a question.
Yes, sir.
I want to know the method and procedure that if the board or a member of the board runs into that, there should be some uniform procedure which basically a board member announces that they're a member of some organization and that they recuse themselves on the record. Or, in other words, what kind of method do we have to make sure that we cover ourselves on the record?
Good point, Mr. Wright. The law up until this law was passed basically said the following, whether you're dealing with the TDA or dealing with the council. If I'm a member and I feel like I have a conflict, I have to raise my hand and tell the council or the TDA that I have a conflict, and it's up at that point in time for the TDA or the council to, in a motion and a second and a vote, to recuse me as a member. This law changes that. All you have to do with this law is that the public official recuses themselves. They raise their hand and say, John, I know we're getting ready to vote on an allocation to blank. I have a relationship with them, and I sit with them as a director, an officer, a governing board member, and I'm going to recuse myself. You don't have to have the approval of the other board members. You yourself did that. We have already done this with council. Mr. Warden sits, as I've indicated to you, with JOED, that is Jones Onslow Economic Development. The council had to consider something in reference to that the other night at the council meeting. Mr. Warden raised his hand, and he was extremely, totally quiet during the whole conversation, did not advocate for or against it, and did not certainly vote, could not play a role, because that is a 501c3 again. But again, that's all you got to do is raise your hand, and we'll
Don't have to get up and leave the room or
Oh,
anything.
no, sir. No, sir. But you have to, again, sit silently, can't advocate for or against or try to influence the other folks who are considering it.
And I also took that to mean even prior to the meeting. I was very careful not to say anything to my fellow council members on that subject, so.
I agree, Mr. Warden, and I agree because of the language in the statute, because it says, A, deliberating or voting on the contract. That's what you do when you're in session. But then B, attempting to influence any other person who is deliberating, voting, that could be something, like you said, that it could have occurred prior to the meeting. So again, I think you're 100% right. You should not be engaging in conversations to other council members or other directors saying, I can't talk about this, I can't vote on this, but I sure wish you would support this or whatever. But again, just raise your hand and we'll make sure that the record shows that you're recusing yourself, because we want not only to protect the validity of every contract and of every allocation that y'all make, but we also want to protect you. Thank you.
Any other questions for John? Well, John, I know that you've spent a lot of time on this. I appreciate it, and I know the other members do as well. It's been a concern of yours to make sure that we have the right information to make the right decision, and I, for one, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Having said that, I think everybody knows that I have been a member of Sturgeon City Board of Directors, and I have also sat as a Board of Director for the Onslow Jacksonville Sports Commission. However, I'm no longer a board member. I am now an ex officio of that organization. So I have thought about this quite a bit. I don't take this lightly, and John is correct. You really have to be careful in this arena. But I'm going to stay with both organizations, and I need John to know that. I need the board members to know that. And I'll do my best imitation of Bob Wharton every chance I get.
You'll be in jail.
You'll be staying there.
I've looked at it also from the perspective of what has already happened with both of these organizations through the funding of this organization. And I don't see that there would be any, well, you can't see into the future, but I don't see where either organization would be requesting any more money than they are going to receive from us, if they receive any. And so I just I have been an advocate for both. I have been there from day one on both organizations. They're kind of like my babies, and I just don't want to give them up. So having said that, if in the future it does become a problem, then I will step away from both organizations or this organization, whichever one I feel I need to. But I wanted to get that on record because I don't want anybody to feel uneasy with my decision. And going forward, I'll make sure that I am out of the way when it comes to funding for either one of those organizations. But I do appreciate what you've done in this regard of making sure that everybody understands and is up to date on it. So thank you for that.
Thank you, sir.
All right, moving along. For anybody have any questions about that? Good. All right, let's move to actions needed, legislative budget amendment. So let me make sure I've got this right. Hold on just a second.
Did we not do consent? Did you not do consent?
We have talked about that and thought about that, Mr. Warden, and we can certainly do a consent agenda. We would have to be, again, you don't have many action items like this. We would also have to be very careful that with this new ethics law. But again, that's something that, and Anthony may talk about, there's different things with him and Deanna, they've taken over the leadership of different ways to approach it. But certainly you could have a consent agenda, but we'll just kind of have to watch that.
Sir, we definitely wanted to bring that question up at some point in time with the directors. And as you recall how we deal with this with the Transportation Advisory Committee, what we do with the consent agenda is we use that to shorten the overall length of the meeting when there are other longer action items that need to be addressed. So depending on the length of the agenda, we might actually add a consent agenda.
Well, agenda number one is pretty straightforward. Gail, did you want to make any comments one way or the other?
Yeah, this is just a budget amendment to formalize the action you took in July to appropriate some fund balance to fund the promotions activity. So it's very straightforward.
Members, have you had a chance to look this over? And if someone's ready to make a motion, I'll entertain.
We adopt the attached budget amendment.
Second.
A second to it. Any comments? Call for the vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay. Agenda item number one is gone. Gail, you can rest easy. We just moved $133,000 just like that. All right, on item number two, committee reports. This would be a report from myself as representative on the ad hoc committee, tourism related. If you'll look at page 10 and 11, I don't know that I need to go over every one of these. Basically, in our meeting on the 24th, on the 11th, I think it was, we went over all of the items that you see in front of you, and I want everybody on the full board, even though we don't have all members here, to make sure they understand where we are on the signs. All the information is in front of you. There is no budget situation with any of the signs as far as not having enough money. You've got the wayfaring signs. You can look at your screen and see where we are on that. The staff has run into some, the staff has continued to run into some roadblocks, but they're making lots of headway with those roadblocks, and I'll turn it over to the staff if they want to comment about the roadblocks or anything else.
No, staff is continuing to work on the NCDOT wayfinding. If you recall that we have 50 different locations for these signs,
And we were hoping that we could just submit one kind of larger map to DOT. That didn't work. So we are working on making 50 individual maps. And so we're a little bit behind schedule, but we're hoping to get that back into DOT's hands in the next week.
Thank you. As you'll notice on the items that the first two items anyway, that the ad hoc committee recommended continuing with the project, so we didn't have any questions. But again, in keeping with making sure that everybody's up to date, we want the full committee to be able to review this as well. So any questions on the wayfaring signs? Okay. On the Legeran Memorial Garden sign, again, more roadblocks, and the staff is working with them. And go ahead.
So the roadblock we ran into is we've been working with a known mason, Mr. Williams, that has done some extensive work with the city of Jacksonville at the cemetery. And we were communicating during the holidays, and I think he's just super busy. So during the ad hoc committee meetings, Mr. Warden suggested I contact the country club because they had a recent sign. And so I did talk to Miss Brittany. She gave me one contact information, and she knows of two other masons. So I'm waiting for her to give you some more information. And I did reach out to a mason that I found here locally. So we're hoping that I'll get someone to give me a call back, and we can talk about the scope and then move forward with getting them under contract. So I'm just trying to find someone who's willing to do the project at this point.
Any questions?
No, is there a number that we should give out while we're?
Yes, you can call me at my desk at 910-938-5073. Thank you, Mr.
There
Davis.
you go.
Oh, I didn't know you were a mason.
I'll yell at you right after.
Looking for extra work. Huh?
Right.
Well, again, we appreciate the staff's diligence on this, and I know it's very exasperating for you guys to be right at the brink and then have to take 3 or 4 steps backwards. But, hey, that's government, right? All right, on the Beirut Memorial Grove site markers, we did make a recommendation there. The full board was in, or the ad hoc committee was in full agreement with this. We still are having a debate on what to do over there. And rather than continue to wrestle with this from month to month, we have decided to just put this on hold for at least 6 months before we take any more action. That way we won't have to keep going over the same thing every time. So this project is on hold for 6 months, and we will bring it back at that time, and we'll see where everybody stands. Any comments or questions about that one? Okay. All right, the visitor center. As all of you know, we do have a tentative location for the visitor center, and I think the staff reviewed some of that. Again, they're working, well, let's back up for just a minute. Hold on just a minute. Stop. The staff has been able to put their stuff together and were awarded, is that the right word to use? $750,000
Yes.
worth of grant money. So I'll let you.
Yeah, we're preliminarily. But we did get some good news. We're working through what they call the due diligence period, which means that we had to provide them with more information specific to the parcel itself. We have been able to get all of the information that we need. We're waiting for one letter, which we're expecting any day. And once we get that letter submitted to the grantor, we're optimistic that we'll get the official award letter. But that's kind of where we're at with the grant itself.
Okay. Once you get that letter, can you give the members a time frame? Not for construction, but most grants have a limit. You got to have something going on within a certain amount of time. Could you go over that with everybody so they understand?
Sure. So once we receive the grant, we have initially 4 years to construct, to move towards construction. And so that allows us time to discuss the needs of the building itself. We submitted the grant application based off of an older site layout, so we still have some work ahead of us, which provides us lots of opportunities to talk with our various stakeholders, to one, identify who the stakeholders are, how the building might be used, and we've got plenty of time to work through all of that, any design modifications, and then into construction.
Thank you. I wanted the full board to understand that there's no rush on this. There's nothing that has to be decided next week or next month or even next year for that matter. We do have plenty of time, and as such, we need to take our time to make sure that we do it right. As she pointed out, who are the stakeholders going to be for this project? And so we've got the time to do that, and I wanted everybody to understand that, because sometimes grants come up or projects come up, and everybody pulls their hair out and says, oh, we got to do this in a year or whatever. In this case, we have 4 years. Now, that's not to say we're going to sit on our hands, but we do have some breathing room here, and we're going to utilize that breathing room by finding out, a little bit more about who would be in the building and some other things about the building. I think we can pretty much say that $750,000 is not going to fund the whole project. Is that safe to say? So, again, if we have other stakeholders, we would, question them on what they were going to bring to the table, and the construction of this would probably fall on two entities, the city and this board right here. So we need to stay on top of this and understand what everybody's obligation is. So we got a lot of work to do. I'm being long-winded. We got a lot of work to do, but we have some time to do it in. Any comments from any of the board members?
Just to clarify my understanding of the 4 years, is it construction must be ongoing within 4 years or completed within 4 years?
It's completed.
Okay.
But there is an opportunity to extend the grant if we're making good progress. So if you haven't put a shovel in the ground after 4 years, chances are they're probably not going to extend. But if you're within a stone's throw of having the building or whatever project completed, then they'll likely extend it.
Just, if I can, just to give some perspective, when we designed and started design for Jacksonville Station, which is a much larger project, that design period was 18 months, and construction ended up being another 18 to 20 months. So we've got plenty of time within that 4 years to get, like Anthony said, substantially underway for construction, if not completed.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification.
And if you weren't aware, Deanna's very good at that, so.
Apparently I can do the larger projects, the smaller ones did.
Roadblocks with the smaller ones.
Apparently.
Well, one of the things I want to go on record as saying, both from this platform and also for the general public to understand is, I want to compliment you and tell you how much we appreciate the work that you do in getting this grant, the work that you did on getting this grant. And it was one of those quick turnarounds, I know, where, hey, guess what? We can do this if we do it now. And I know that pressure, I've been there, I know what that means. So I appreciate it, and I know other members appreciate it. And look, keep looking under rocks and see if we can get more money, but that's what you guys do, and you do it very well, and thank you very much for that. We appreciate it. All right, and moving along, we've got the sports Orientated Capital Facility Investment, which basically is the new property that the city has just recently purchased. And it's going to be used for, well, I don't think the final decision on how and what it's going to be used for other than recreation. And that's a great thing for the community. As a former recreation director, I sit in envy of having something like this. I wish I was still working so I could get my feet and hands dirty and move it along, but I know the staff will do that anyway. Bob, I know that recently you had a walkthrough with the staff member,
Yes.
with the council. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. We met out there last week, and we met with the city staff, primarily the council and the city staff, and they had cut some lanes through the land there, so we got a good taste. We rode from, if you're looking at the screen, basically the far right, middle right up to basically the top left side there, and then down a little bit also, and we walked actually back in up one of the streams in the middle, so where we could see some houses there in Williamsburg Parkway area. The land is rolling, nice and high and dry, and at the same time there's all kinds of nice ravines and good drainage on that site. It's a well-drained site other than the portion that you see on the bottom left in blue. So it's just a beautiful piece of land, and we're looking forward to developing it over the next 20, 30 years or so. So, and as you said, besides recreation, we hope to have some sort of sports-oriented tourism or investment in that area also.
Thank you. I had the opportunity this past weekend. My granddaughter was playing in a volleyball tournament, club team from UNCW, and I didn't even know this place existed. It's up close to the airport between Raleigh and Durham. It's Wake Recreation something. And when I arrived on the site, they had 3 buildings. One of the buildings had a sign, and it was for gymnastics. And the building that she was going to play in said volleyball. And then the third building, I didn't know what it was, and I assumed it was basketball. So we went into the volleyball one, and it was a plain vanilla envelope building, although it was a very nice building, steel, concrete, the whole thing. And it is part of the Capital City, I think I have it right, the Capital City Volleyball Association. And it just dazzled me because I had no idea it even existed. So in between matches, I went over to the third building, and then I really got a surprise. It is the practice facility for the Carolina Hurricanes, and they had 2 ice rinks in it. So that's how large the building was. Two full-size ice rinks. Wow. And as a matter of fact, the Hurricanes had just finished their practice for that day, and they had a training room upstairs, and some of them were still in there. And on one of the rinks, youth were playing. They have a youth league, and they looked to be about 10-year-olds skating and playing the game. And they had just finished a game on the other one, and it was women. I say women, it was girls, and they were high school age, had been playing a hockey game. So that really piqued my interest, and so I talked to one of the people downstairs that was the supervisor, and I said, how did this thing happen? And he said, one individual bought the property and developed the site. And I was kind of flabbergasted about that. But, you know, the building where the volleyball was, and all they had in that building was volleyball. They didn't have basketball, which I found very interesting. I looked at it, and you would have a better idea, but I thought no more than $2 million for the building. I could be off. Basically, it was a concrete floor. It had 3 steel beams running across it, and then, of course, the ends. And so while I was looking at that, I'm thinking to myself, in reference to this organization, we're in a situation where we can do some things. You know, we can really do some things. So I'm going to see if I can talk to the Sports Commission executive and see if, I'm sure he knows about the site, and maybe take a trip up there and get some more questions answered, because, you know, I found it amazing that one person would have done this. But we have the opportunity, and we can probably do some wonderful things that we're not even considering right now. And there are grants out there. I know the PARTAF grant that the Recreation uses quite a bit, which you can get up to $500,000. You have to match that. I've already talked to the chairman of that committee. He's a good friend of mine. And I asked him if this organization would be eligible for a PARTAF grant. And guess what the answer was? We are. So if you put all of that money together, you know, you're talking about another $1 million between the city and the TDA looking at facilities. So we've got a wonderful opportunity here, and I'm just so excited. I don't know.
I'd like to make another additional comment, just so the citizens that are watching and Chris, so you know, and we've talked about it at our meeting, but there's some wetland crossing permits that are expiring the end of 2023, and we're thinking that between hiring the engineer to design the crossings, transferring the permits over into the city's name from the previous owner, and actually putting in the crossings, the physical crossings with culverts or a bridge or whatever needs to be designed, is somewhere around $350,000, maybe up to $500,000 or so. And we've already, the city has already set aside at least $350,000 at this point to go ahead and put those in. So once that's designed, we'll be advertising for bids and actually having a contractor install those crossings somewhere between, my guess would be sometime this summer perhaps would be probably the earliest we probably would do that work. But we just want to go ahead and get that. So the folks watching, the citizens watching, the city is still, besides the investment in the property, purchasing the property, we're also at this point investing in some infrastructure to get it ready to start looking at what we can do on the property. So that site visit we took just sort of helped us just to kind of visualize what a magnificent piece of property we've got and what a great opportunity it is for the citizens of Jacksonville. Whatever we come up with, we can't lose. Whatever we put in there will be a blessing to our community. So we're excited.
Very good. So on the visitor center, the clock's ticking for 4 years. On this one, the clock's ticking to meet the permit.
And
We don't want that to expire because I know that would be a nightmare.
yeah,
So there are things, at least on this site, that will you'll see start moving because that's a year and a half away.
yeah.
It goes by like
if
that.
we don't take advantage of the permits for the expires, there's a very good chance that we will not be able to renew those permits. The state has not been very generous in doing those sort of things in the past, so that's
Now,
our first priority.
Will you have to be, will it have to be completed by 23, or you could be in the process? And
I think they have to be. I don't know but I think they have to be completed.
Okay.
I think you actually have to have the crossings, and really what you're also paying is mitigation. We're impacting the wetlands by crossing it, and so there is some dollars, and it's not insignificant dollars. It's 90 some $1,000s an acre or more, if I'm remembering correctly. Quite expensive that we have to pay for whatever we impact. We impact an acre, we have to send the state, let's just say $100,000 or more, just for the privilege of crossing that stream.
Well, then we'll get some of that back in grant money then, right? Thank you for that report. I'm assuming that from time to time we'll continue to get reports on the
Yes.
progress at that particular
Yes.
site because we do want to make, the city does want to make that deadline happen.
Yep.
Any other questions on that?
I have not a question about the sports-oriented investment, but a question back to the visitor center. It says construction of a visitor center within 4 years of receipt of the grant. Definition of what constitutes construction: full construction, partial construction. How much of that must we do in order to respect the terms of the grant?
Most grants, as long as we're showing a good faith effort towards completing construction, they are inclined to amend the grant deadline to push that out if needed. But as I mentioned before, I think within 4 years we should be in a pretty good position to either be substantially under construction, if not finished, within 4 years.
There's no express writing saying finished construction. I mean,
No, sir.
it gives us leeway.
Yeah, we do have leeway.
Oh, thank you.
Mr. Wright, one thing to point out too is that the clock has not yet started. So the clock will not start until the grant has officially been awarded, where the city council agrees to accept the money and they agree to give us the money in writing.
That is the definition of receipt.
Yes.
Receipt of, okay.
So once that occurs, once the ink dries on that agreement, then the clock will start for the 4 years.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Well, Ernie, I can only speak from my experience with recreation grants, which I did several of them. Mm-hmm. In one particular grant that we had out at Northeast Creek, I asked for and received 3 extensions for various reasons. Some of them were supply issues, some of them were wet weather and all that. And they're usually very generous. I mean, once you start a project and you got $2 million of a $4 million project already completed, they know you're going to complete it.
Right.
So-
This is 750,000. I just want to make sure
Yeah.
we're not going to lose any of it.
No,
anything like
I don't see that happening. Thank you so much. All right, let's move along. Agenda number 3. This is a committee report from the Marketing Committee, so I'll turn it over to Teresa and Susan.
Or Chris.
Or Chris, I'm sorry.
Let's start with Mr. Davis.
What did I do?
Yeah, I'll update them on the ad hoc meeting. We met here at our beautiful City Hall on February 11th. And, of course, had our discussion with Mr. Carter, as he said, and then we began talking about our current website. I know we've talked about this in the past, some of the challenges that we're currently facing, some of the resolutions that would come from a new website. Basically, with the current website, the visitjacksonvillenc.com, it's approximately 8-9 years old. So it was scheduled for redesign this year, but it has very outdated features and a very slow back-end technology. Funding for the redesign has previously been approved. But some of the challenges that you see on your screen right now was primarily the outdated design, which left us with a lockdown template, significantly restricting what we can do from our end. With the limited integration, video, any kind of content that we're putting up there, and a very limited analytics for anything that we wanted to collect from it, which, as our marketing team can vouch, is extremely valuable to them. That's going to dictate the directions that the moves that they make. With the redesign, Susan had filled us in a little more in detail about this, which she would be helpful for you to do afterwards, Susan. But one of the examples that she referred us to was visitallentexas.com. And after looking at that one, it is significantly more user-friendly, much easier to navigate. It had a much more modern, updated look to it, open format template. Faster back in, and a choice of analytics. So some of the key areas that this is going to resolve for us, primarily from the user end, is a streamlined navigation. They're just going to be able to navigate the site with significant ease compared to what we have now. And as with any website, an attractively designed site is what's going to attract people and keep them there and show them the information that they're looking for specifically. On our end, from a marketing perspective, it's significantly going to improve content creation and how we are working and interacting with this site. Any kind of agile content platform needs to unify content and support a good consistency, which in turn supports creativity and what our marketing team can do. And the last thing we want them tied up with is fighting it from a technical standpoint, trying to figure out how to do some part of what they want to do. So it's going to be much more modern digital content approach to this. It's just going to reflect very well on our community. And Teresa, Susan, if there's anything you'd like to add specifically regarding, the sample of visitallentexas.com and what that brings.
It is just going to give our visitors to the site a lot better experience, but also just when they land on the page for them to see beautiful pictures and video and things that we have as assets to invite them here. It's really going to be beneficial for that. And for the back end, like you said, we won't be struggling nearly like we have been. So that's great. And then the analytics drives everything we do. That's the beauty of doing digital marketing, is it can drive everything. So we need that information in real time.
And
So
this will be
we will have
vastly
that.
superior, particularly with Google Analytics.
Yes, yes.
And Mr. Davis, if I may, another key component of this website update is the fact that it uses the same backbone as the City of Jacksonville website. So we already have a working knowledge of how the system works. We've already got content that you can move pretty much immediately over too. So it's going to streamline the update process. The key here, as you mentioned and as Teresa mentioned, is updating, making it modern, making it appealing. Because one of the things that the promotion committee talked about is this is our home base. You know, when we send out marketing information, we say, come back to visitjacksonvillenc.gov. And, you know, we want that to be as equally impressive as the message that we put out there to bring them to home base. So this is an exciting opportunity. And the fact that it already fits within the existing budget, I think is just, you know, icing on the cake.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And a shout out, this is Susan, to Lisa Miller for hustling and all of the work she did to get us in touch and to help figure out some of this.
Absolutely. And I think it is important that, you know, everybody watching and everybody sitting here understands, you know, it's complex. There's a lot to it. But it's everything now.
Okay, any comments, members? Thank you, Chris. Sorry I overlooked you.
Oh, no, that's fine. But any of us, we were all in that committee meeting.
Okay. Well, I will go to item number 3 now. And Teresa. What do we do? Oh, are we still on the hoteliers?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead,
Just
Chris.
with a generalized market temperature, you know, we're at that point to where there's been an uptick. You know, you're seeing the government business in the market, you're seeing corporate business starting to trickle back in, which, you know, the industry as a whole didn't really anticipate to resume fully until 2023 or later. But we're at that point to where we're really seeing that demand start to uptick pretty consistently across the board. And you're starting to see that group demand start to return in general, which is just a remarkable sign for everybody. Okay. That's it. Just a pretty general market update, but it's looking good.
Thank you. Okay.
Now.
Sorry about that, Teresa.
That's okay. Thank you, Mr. Hagan. So we're going to give you your marketing team is going to give you a quick update. We're going to hit the highlights. In your packet, you have, in the handout, you have the full marketing report, but everybody doesn't want to hear us drone on about all of that. So the highlights, you recall we have an ad buy with Visit NC, our state ad buy. And one of the things that we have completed is on National Plan for Vacation Day on January 25th. Did y'all know that was a thing? No. It is. And there's a lot of tourism marketing that goes out around that time. So we were fortunate enough to be able to launch an Instagram story with Visit NC. The stories last for 24 hours. They have 170,000 followers, I think. 170, right? 171,000 or something. So, but the story lasts for 24 hours and it's a slideshow. So you have 9 slides to basically tell your story and entice someone to visit your market. And sticking with what we know, we're finding more and more consistent is what works for us is targeting families who want to visit for long weekends and for week-long vacations and featuring our outdoors, which is what everybody seems to want at this time. So we started our story with showing Jacksonville. Let me pay attention to showing the beach, our lovely family at some of our parks, fishing on the New River, the memorials, Mike's Farm, some great places that people would like to take their kids to eat, enticing places. And finished up with a hotel shot in the pool. So, and that headline, if you can't read it, is looking for fun without breaking the bank. That did extremely well for us when we did our digital campaign last year, so we thought we would start off the year with the same thing. We had great results. The results were that we had almost 31,000 impressions, which is very strong for a 24-hour period of time, and 660 engagements, which is good. Another thing we wrapped up was we had purchased a couple of featured events, and this lives on the visitnc.com website. So they get just hundreds of thousands of people trafficking through that site every month. We settled on Winterfest, Jacksonville's Winterfest. Number one, we had, fewer events because of COVID to choose from. And this event is, we chose because of our ongoing efforts to attract out-of-town visitors. This is an attractive event. Also, you remember we partner with Onslow County Tourism, and we have a buy in our state magazine. We are able to purchase this magazine at a very discounted rate because we purchased that through Coast Host. We're a member of that organization, as is Onslow County. So we purchased the contract, and we have 6 placements total. Onslow County places 3, and we place 3. So out of 12 months, we're in their magazine 6 times, so 50% of the time. So the repetition and people seeing Jacksonville and Onslow County is what's going to make it successful instead of just being a basic one and done. So again, this one ran in March. We have March and April placements, and October. And March, we did America's Stories Told Here, again, showing a family. This is from our photo shoot last year with a gentleman and his granddaughter at the Gardens. The April placement, the April magazine just came out, and we highlighted staying with the our beautiful outdoors. We decided to go with Hammocks Beach State Park. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Susan and let her talk about some of the stories that have landed.
Sure. One of the events that we just had was the Montford Point Marine Gold Medal Ceremony on February 19th. And I'm really proud of this one, guys. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit of background here. But basically, you've heard me talk about Black Southern Belle. She was one of the first people when we started working on our PR efforts a few years back that we hosted in Jacksonville. Well, she has one of the most popular blogs for Black women in the country. And the young woman who figured out that her grandfather was deserving of the Montford Point Marines Congressional Gold Medal was browsing for Christmas ideas on the Black Southern Belle blog and came across this story. We'd asked her to put it in because we knew at Christmas time people ended up talking to their families, and she did. And she's like, oh my gosh, I think my grandfather's a Montford Point Marine. She emailed the Montford Point Marine secretary at 1 a.m. in the morning. She couldn't sleep. She was thinking about it. It turns out she has some images of the Montford Point Marine group that her grandfather had. And what is priceless about that image is that her grandfather had the names of the men in the picture. So there have already been 2 additional Montford Point Marines tracked down from that picture. And then she was talking to her childhood friend. They grew up in Indiana together, and both of their grandfathers lived in Indiana. She goes, Reggie, you're not going to believe what's happening here. She goes, I know you're going to love it because you were a Marine for 10 years, and he served at Cherry Point, and he actually still lives in North Carolina now. And he said, wait a minute. He goes, I think my grandfather may have been a Montford Point Marine. So these 2 childhood friends chose to come to Jacksonville because they wanted to be where it all started. And they did their gold medal, or their Congressional medal ceremony here. And parts of their family came. It was a little bit slower because of COVID. Not as many people came. But here's what's happened based off of that. I pitched hard here some in North Carolina with a segment on WITN. And then Lisa and the communications team, they shot video and stills. John Althouse was one of the photographers. And we packaged those up in a Dropbox for them. And I knew that Mallory has a lot of hustle in her. And she was just absolutely convinced that we were going to keep telling this Montford Point Marine story. She couldn't believe that there were still, possibly as many as 18,000 people out there whose families still deserve this honor. They're still looking for them. And because no written record exists, as many of you know. So anyway, since this weekend, the Chronicle Tribune is a newspaper in Coral Springs, Florida, that has worked with, they were in Indiana, sorry, and then Coral Springs, Florida, where she lives now. WTHR is an NBC affiliate, like WITN, and they are going to probably do something in the next 24 hours. And then right before we came on, I found out that they had gotten another placement in the Indianapolis paper. There's a lot of opportunity for us to bring things together. The organizations that have used our images and videos have definitely credited us as Visit Jacksonville, and I appreciate the city team for allowing all that cooperation. I think there still may be a few more things in the works, so some really outstanding reach from that. So thanks for that opportunity, and a big heads up and shout out to the city team for their work with the video and photography. As we continue on into the marketing report, we've still got more Montford Point Marine traction here. NC Tripping, which is the biggest blog in North Carolina and most active, they have about, between their Facebook and Instagram, about 110,000 social media followers. They put out a post about the Montford Point Marine Memorial as part of Black History Month. So we were excited about that. We also, moving along, had a new placement with Style Blueprint. And I believe that we emailed you about this one. I don't ever want you to bump into somebody in the grocery store and not know what media placements, if somebody's excited about something. So you'll usually receive these in email, and then we can go into them a little more here. This one says probably 10 to 20,000 impressions, but I do know from the editor of this piece that it got picked up by another news affiliate or a news conglomeration that lots of sites kind of serve as gateways to other sites. And so it had already hit 10,000. It hadn't been online 2 hours. And so I feel like it's probably well beyond that. But that's what my, computer software said, because it's not able to figure out, what the actual reach is. But this was a national publication. The editors are in Nashville, Tennessee, and we landed this story. It's about Jacksonville and Swansboro, kind of as a joint piece. So we were really excited about that. I believe that this year will be the year of the small town. And so looking ahead at our marketing and PR opportunities, we have some work out there. We've secured interview with Teresa at Mike's Farm for a possible agritourism story in a statewide publication. So we're keeping our fingers crossed about that. You never count your ducks before they're hatched in this business. We've set dates for a familiarization tour in May, and we're already reaching out to media to book their calendars for that. We may even get some in a little bit before then, but we've got our budgeted amount. And we know where our boundaries are. And then we also will be presenting about 20 images to get our story into the Visit North Carolina travel guide, which reaches about 500,000 people, or they print about 500,000 copies. One of the cool things, and you'll be seeing this, is we've just realized that in the 2021 travel guide is we had some really nice nods and inclusions, and you'll be seeing those at our next report. We just found out about those. And so then I'll turn it back over to Teresa to tell you a little bit more about what we've got coming up in marketing.
And you have that. The
Oh, that's right. Thanks,
Yeah,
Teresa.
no
Thanks.
worries. And this is a joint effort. Susan and also Salem from Onslow County, this is what she's talking about when she's pitching at the North Carolina Visit NC Governors Conference when they're pitching. This is the result. Salem was actually, this is her photography on the front cover of the Coastal Visitors Guide, and I've marked the pages inside, and we've got we've got inclusion for Lejeune Memorial Gardens, as well as a nice piece about North Topsail Beach and including fishing on the New River. So those are yours to keep. Take a look. Just look through them. Nice job, girls.
Very nice.
It's been a long time coming. So looking ahead for the rest of your marketing, what we're working on currently is our digital campaign to kick off mid-March. So that is well underway, and we're working on the website content, working with Lisa closely, getting things taken care of for that. We have changed images, et cetera, et cetera. That's an ongoing process, depending on seasonality and promotions and assets added. We actually have someone in town right now who is working with us. We're developing something super cool that Susan has been talking about since 5 years ago, I think. And that is our unique opportunity with some of the ethnic food restaurants that we have here in Jacksonville. And as a local, sometimes we overlook this. And Susan was amazed when she first came to town what we had. And a lot of it stems from the military. And the young guys embrace it and older guys because they've traveled and they love the food. So we're working on an ethnic food trail. And that'll be a blog on our site, and we'll push that out and promote it, and that'll give us opportunity to attract a different type of visitor. The staff and Susan and myself will be attending the Governor's Conference in March, and Susan and I are working we're working on a Instagram giveaway with NC Tripping. Those do really, really well with his followers. They love it. It's very engaging. So as you know, you guys, the board approved some funding for a radio station promotion, Crystal Slumber Party. That was moved because of COVID from January, and that is this weekend. So we'll be setting up and getting that all underway. Montfort Point, Susan told you about that. And again, kudos to Susan and Lisa. They worked their tails off all weekend long getting that coverage. And Winterfest was last weekend. My understanding from Susan Baptist is that was very well attended and the promotion went very well. So the next thing on our target is Veterans Tribute Weekend. It seems like November's a long way away, but in our world, it's tomorrow. So we are working closely with the Ad Hoc Committee. You know, you'll remember that the first year we launched that promotion, it really did well. We had a lot of interest and had some folks visit the market actually to attend that. It has really got a lot. It really has a lot of potential. The last 2 years, because of COVID, had to dial it back, but we kept the event brand alive, just promoting and scaled back. This year, we really feel like we're in a position to start growing this to the next level. So we've got some great ideas. We've been working with some of our partners, brainstorming, and we're bringing that to the Ad Hoc Committee pretty quickly. 2 other events that you funded that I just want to put on your radar. Jazz in the City did not happen in February as it normally does because of COVID, but I understand from Dr. Kane that they're looking at early May for a date, so I'm excited to know that that'll come back. And the Ali Temple's Charity Ball they're pushing forward for June. So those 2 events will be happening.
Okay, Teresa, if I may, not violating any conflict of interest, but the Jazz in the City, the date has been set at Sturgeon City for 21 May.
Okay, awesome.
And it's going to be a combination of Mardi Gras and jazz.
Excellent.
Together.
Oh, nice.
That gives us a little more planning time. They probably weren't available the 1st of May. So that concludes our marketing report. Any questions?
Great.
Great report, Susan. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Always
That's,
good to be with you.
that story about the Montford Point granddaughters, if you will, is quite amazing. I like that.
Yes.
I like that. Thank you.
For that, I can't deliver that because I'll
There.
cry.
I know. Hey, I started to tear
You
up myself.
and your efforts and y'all saying go. So I'm excited about that. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the hard work that both of you do. We appreciate it.
Have a comment.
Yes, sir.
Page 97 has a thing on our fishing. Page 97, right-hand side, New River, Jacksonville. Little blurb in the fishing. Page 97.
And I totally did not mark that for you. My apologies. I knew it was there.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was kind of neat.
There you go.
And there's so much more to be had. That's the great thing about looking through this, right?
Yeah.
It's good to have this. Thank you for furnishing this for us. I
Thank you.
appreciate that.
And it is very well done.
Okay, let's see if I can stay on mission here. Number 4 has been taken care of. And I'm going to turn it over to Anthony because I think number 5 has been taken care of, but I'll let you do your thing.
Thank you, Mr. Hagan. If I could, I'd like to switch gears a little bit and focus on a little bit more administrative type work than our promotions and marketing. Wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the ad hoc committees. As you recall, about a year ago, the board of directors executed on or exercised Article 6 to create what we refer to as the ad hoc committees. And one of those, of course, is focused on tourism-related investments, which we commonly refer to capital. The others, of course, too, is promotion. And that format seems to have been working well for the past year. And I think we've all learned a lot, and we've made a lot of progress in doing work over the time. The question that we had for you is, given that it's not going to do it for me here, but given that the bylaws allow for 2 different types of committees, the question is, do we feel that the committees are going to remain ad hoc in nature, or do we feel that they're going to become more permanent and be integrated into our business processes long term? The reason that I ask is because when you think about the word ad hoc, that typically means more of a temporary type of action. So a committee that's formed for one specific purpose, and then once that purpose is complete, then it's disbanded. A standing committee, on the other hand, indicates that you're going to have a revolving purpose from year to year to year. So this is really kind of a minor clerical issue, but definitely wanted to get some feedback from the directors on how you feel with the ad hoc versus the standing committee designation.
Members?
For one, I agree. I mean, I think it's been very beneficial. I think we would all agree that we've learned a lot. And it certainly involved this body in a significant way with, our process in a way that we just had not before. And I get at the time that we started doing this, ad hoc was absolutely the way to do it.
Well, it was a test. It was a
Yeah.
pilot.
Yeah, but I've certainly found them beneficial.
I think we need to make them standing committees. I think they're how we're probably going to, at least for the foreseeable future, conduct business. I think it's very efficient and gets everyone involved in a deeper level than they normally would. So I'm all for standing.
So
Ernie?
consensus of the group.
Yeah, I would agree with Bob and Chris. Standing committee appears to be what we are as far as some sort of permanency. Ad hoc seems to be a one venture or a single concept, and that'll be somewhat confusing because when you complete that concept, you kind of can't move to anything else. So, but this is an ongoing relative committee able to deal with whatever comes up. So, yeah, I'd rather label us as standing committee as opposed to ad hoc.
Well, I agree with that. I have kind of, in my mind at least, viewed them as standing committees anyway. But, so what needs to happen? What do you need to do?
Since we designate these as discussion items, let us prepare this for, since hopefully the whole board will be here next time.
Yeah.
This may be your first consent item that you may be considering at your next meeting.
Okay.
We see what you've done
Right
there.
next to the minutes.
All right, it's right next to the minutes. All right, well, let's move that forward then. I think the consensus from the members that are present is that we want to be a standing.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you. And you have number 6 also?
Yes, sir. If I may continue. Oh, of course it does it now, right? Keep clicking. Okay. So it's early on in the calendar year, but we're getting through the fiscal year from the governmental perspective. I want to give an overview on what we feel the budget process might be for fiscal 23. As you recall from last year, one of the things that we found out is that, while we had enough time to develop the budget and that went very well, one of the struggles was giving feedback to some of our community partners in a timely enough fashion so that they could then respond through their budgeting process to whether funding was available or funding was not. So the intent with this year is to start a little bit earlier. And as you recall, with each one of the ad hoc committees earlier this month, we did start a little bit of the budget discussion. So today, what I'd like to do is go over the budget schedule itself and then hopefully lock in on a revenue projection for fiscal year 23 as well. That's pretty much a linchpin item that helps move us along the path to many other budget activities. Because once we establish what the revenue number is, then we can establish the 1/3, 2/3, and then the individual committees can pick up their work and go from there. So that's what we would like to accomplish today. And in March, that's really where the ad hoc committees are going to complete a bulk of their work. And we talked about that during the last ad hoc committee meetings. The promotions committee is going to spend a lot of time reviewing the applications. We're going to use evaluative criteria this time to objectively score all of those applications and allocate funding. And then from the tourism related side too, there's been discussion about, well, we have all of these projects that are lined up and we're moving forward now, but what about the others that are to come? One of the things that we talked about was the welcome signs, for coming into Jacksonville. The question mark of how much money are we going to allocate to the visitor center? What about the sports-oriented investment? So as we go through March and move into April, we'll be having those conversations with the ad hoc committees to complete a budget presentation on April 28th at our full TDA meeting then. Then the following month, we will conduct a public hearing. Of course, that's required by general statute. And at that time, of course, this is up to the discretion of the board, you can choose to adopt a budget, or if we still need to make adjustments, if there are still questions that need to be answered, we do have the period between May 26 and June 30 to wrap everything up. If we get to June 30 and we haven't adopted a budget yet, I think Gail's probably going to kill me. So one of the things that we might recommend is if we still have questions, comments, concerns on the 26th, we're not quite ready to adopt, we may schedule a special call meeting in the interim. That way we can give ourselves a good cushion between that date and July 1st to have the budget adopted.
Well, thank you for that outline. Personally, I'd like to shoot for the 26th because you start looking at the 30th. If we have a hiccup, boom, next day is July the 1st. So I would certainly encourage us to, try and work the 26th as the day we have the public hearing and the adoption of the budget, unless something comes up at the meeting that causes us to delay. We've had a couple of times when we've had to have a meeting in between to adopt the budget. So if we can stay away from that, it would be desirable.
The goal of staff is to target the 26th.
Yeah.
And if it happens that we have to have a special call meeting, then that's kind of a last resort option, I believe.
All right, well, thank you.
Any other feedback on that?
Anybody else have any comments about the schedule?
So if I could, we'll talk about the revenue projection. Again, you saw this at your ad hoc committees. Of course, those were independent meetings. We're going to review it here together and hopefully gain consensus on what we think the revenue for 23 would be. But a couple of things I want to point out to you. One, on the left side there where it says budget, 975 has remained consistent for a number of years. And I think that was really just in the interest of being conservative, conservative budgeting, which is a good thing. But when you look on the right-hand side where it says difference, the delta has grown over the past 3 years, and it's grown pretty significantly. So 975 was the budget in fiscal year 20. The actual was 1.09. The delta is 118,000. And even though we're not fully through fiscal 22 yet, we do have a pretty good idea of what the projected accruals are going to be. So at 1.224 million, we're roughly $250,000 over what we budgeted. So pose the question to each of the individual ad hoc committees, and independently they felt that the 1.1 million projected revenue was a good place to start. So it didn't take us too close to the edge of what the actual accruals are, but it did increase us above the 975 that we've been on for the past several years. The benefit here, I think, comes from the perspective of the promotions committee, because the 2/3, 1/3 split kind of put them in a situation where they're shorter on cash than they have requests. So by increasing the budget to 1.1 million, of course, that would provide some additional revenue for them to allocate next year for promoting certain events. Any thoughts on the revenue projection?
I think that's very realistic.
Given what you've seen?
Yes.
Well, we wanted to be conservative, but we also wanted to give both of our committees a fair shot at revenue for next year. All right. Thank you. That's all I have.
Well, thank you very much. Good information. I would be an advocate with the visitor center and the land, let's just call it the land for the time being. We know that those are going to be big ticketed items, so at least on our end of it, we need to be making sure that we can take care of those things because we know they're there. And we also know that something in the interim will come up, and we need to have the money available to do that. So when we get down to the nitty-gritty of assigning the money, we're always going to err on the side of caution and have, a pile of money sitting there that is undesignated, I guess is the way you'd say it. All right, well, thank you very much. Good report, good information, and good guidance for us. We appreciate that. All right. Now we'll have the director's comments. We'll start with Bob.
No comment. Thank you.
Okay. Ernie?
No comments. I just want to thank the staff and thank everybody for being here.
Chris?
Same, and I would like to thank Lisa as well for all of her help because she's been phenomenal. The one thing I'd like to throw out just as a thought or suggestion is I always found value in bringing in the chamber, someone on behalf of the chamber, the sports commission, and I felt like that information was extremely valuable to this body. So I did want to throw that out there as something to think about, and I would be interested in seeing that come back into our, be introduced back into the sessions.
So you're suggesting that they be part of the folks to give us information in person?
Rather than just a written report.
Yeah,
we've talked about having them come in on a recurring basis, quarterly or whatever, but that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I think that there were times that, the information, sure, that they were giving us, they could have sent us by email or some other method, but I think there were points to where, through engaging with them, there was just something came out of that.
I think they feel perhaps would feel more like a partner if they were participatory rather than just making a report. Is that what you're?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think the thing to think about also is if we're going to do the visitor center, and you've heard me say this many times, and we're going to look for partners, you know, my thoughts are that if we're going to have a visitor center, the county and the city need to be in it together. Now, that's just me. I don't speak for everybody. I just speak for myself. So, you know, having them at the table will at least make them feel, you know, a little bit better. If we start coming to them, asking them if they want to be a part of it, they should be a part of it right now. And Sports Commission, pretty much the same way. I mean, it looks like we're at least heading in the direction that the Sports Commission would be involved with the land out there. Decisions still have to be made. I understand this is a city project. But, you know, some of the ideas were that we would be able to build some facilities to increase heads on beds. So I think, you know, maybe they don't need to be here every meeting, but I think bringing them back to the table would be a wise move. So I echo your concerns. What does the staff think?
Well, if you don't mind, sir, we have been talking about that a little bit, and just a couple of things before we talk about Sports Commission and Sturgeon City. You know, we're really committed to two things. One is making sure that we're respectful of your time and as well as the time of the folks that are here. So we're going to begin on time and we're going to end on time. And I've got 7 more minutes is what it looks like. The other is
Use them wisely.
Use them all.
The other is Mr. Thomas would be proud of me. So the other thing is, too, we want the meetings to be meaningful, okay? And so if you feel that having input from your partners is a good way to make a meaningful meeting, then we can certainly find a way to integrate that. One thing that I would suggest to you, though, is that we have a number of partners. And so instead of having them all come and report every single time, what we would probably do is bring them in periodically on a rotating basis so they could update us on what's going on. So for instance, because the Sports Commission has had a lot of events recently, maybe the next time we get together is a good opportunity for them to present. Sturgeon City, and so on and so forth. But if that's the direction that you would like for us to go, we can certainly consult with them and figure out a way to bring them back to the table and give them some airtime.
I certainly like the report in here, and I think having them come in on an alternating and somewhat recurring would be nice, just so that we do establish some sort of a relationship rather than where we see them and they see us, and we become a little more partnership rather than just them making a report to us. So.
At some point, you got to be together to be partners, right?
I agree. And I think, you know, when it comes down to it, Salem, Lorette, Scott, they're going to be clawing each other's eyes out to get here anyway. So I think, but they have a strong form of communication to where, like you said, if we need to rotate and there's a need for us to speak to one of them or a need for one of them to want to be here because they have something they'd like to discuss with us in that upcoming session. I mean, I don't see why we couldn't be pretty flexible with that to maximize the efficiency of it.
Well, and the feedback that I've gotten so far is, if nothing else, they would like the opportunity to come and say thank you at some point in time for the contributions that we have to their organization. Again, that's part of being a good partner. So we'll work on that, and there'll be some communication before the next meeting as to how we might integrate it, and we'll try to get that kicked off next time.
Okay, good. Thank you. We appreciate that. And I think one of the things you could do, just as a suggestion, since we control the agenda, you know, if you've got a real heavy agenda, then that wouldn't be the time, you know, obviously, to bring them on. So it might be a little sketchy for them to, you know, I don't know. I'm not sure that you'll be able to set something in concrete every year, but bringing them here, you know, quarterly or sometime.
Ad hoc? We'll bring them in ad hoc.
Good work.
Yeah, and maybe even we have the flexibility to where maybe they're busy, but still need a moment with us and could join us virtually.
Sure.
Well, I would remind every member to go ahead and read their reports. It's good information. And if we have no more business to come before us, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much, staff. We appreciate it.